Welcome everyone to another episode of Tales of the LGBTQ+. My name is Douglas Parsons. The word family is a difficult word to say. For some, it is unconditional love. For others, it brings up a lot of pain and turmoil. For myself, I am very lucky with my blood family in that I am close to my father, mother, sister, and my nephew. My great-grandmother and my great-uncle are no longer alive, but I had their unconditional love as they helped in the raising of myself. Here in the LGBTQ+ community, though, we have the choice of who we want as part of our day-to-day lives. This is a chosen family that we can create. And it's something that I didn't get my butt kicked into gear about until the last 5 years, when I woke up and realized that I have a family around me, a family that I would go through walls for, support unconditionally, and people who I have missed immensely in the past year, not being able to see face to face. I mentioned this type of family because this week's guest, as well as next week's guest, are two people who are essential parts of my chosen family. They're my friends, they're my aunts. They are love, unconditional love. Today's guest is Karen Hofmann. One-on-one interview with me. Next week, her wife, Pam Hofmann, will be doing the same. And then finally, at the end of Pride Month, the two of them will come together for a very special episode. Now, why do these two people get 3 episodes? Well, it's my show and I want to be able to show you the people I love. But it's not just that. It's because Pam and Karen Hofmann are living the greatest love story that has never been put down onto paper or been shown on your screens so far. Karen and Pam met in Los Angeles, California, when Karen was in grade 10, Pam was in grade 9. Karen tells the story about how they met and how she knew Pam was her soulmate from an early age. Karen comes back to Canada to go to university and misses Pam immensely. Pam leaves Los Angeles, goes to Canada. Soon they marry and have 2 kids. This sounds like a typical story, of course. But Karen had a secret. Karen's secret is that she was born with the exterior of a male. Karen is transgender, and she lived her life knowing this. Where was she going to go in life? The issues, the struggles, and here she has fallen in love with Pam, her soulmate. This conversation today talks about the love, some of the tribulations that they went through. It focuses on who we are as people. And of course, it's a fantastic segue when I get Pam's side of the story next week. There's unconditional love, and I'm going to say it over and over and over again, because Pam and Karen Hofmann give unconditional love to nearly everyone who ever gets into their orbit. It's wisdom, it's love, it's giving you a kick in the butt if you need to, or if you just need to hear a dirty joke, that's good too. I adore these two ladies, and I am thrilled that they wanted to be on this podcast. I didn't want to go to them and ask them to share their story. I wanted them to come to me, and they have done so. I didn't want to take advantage of my relationship with both of them to give you a beautiful story, a difficult story, especially of two people that I just want to wrap up in bubble wrap and hold and adore for life. That sounds kind of creepy, but I meant it in a good way. So enough about me yammering about Karen. How about we just start this episode and you can start falling in love with her as well. Today on Tales of the LGBTQ+, my very special guest is Karen Hofmann, and that interview starts right now. Hello, Karen. Welcome to Tales of the LGBTQ+. How are you doing today?
Nice to be here in a hot and windy day. Mind you, I guess we have 1 week of summer and that's it. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's get out there and enjoy it later.
Yeah. Welcome to Alberta. If you don't like the weather, wait 5 minutes and the season you want will come around sometime in the next hour.
Yeah, it's the mountain weather. Yeah.
This is an interview that I've been waiting for a long time, but I can also tell you that this is the most nervous I've ever been with any of the interviews we've done so far. And it's because I've known you now for over 10 years, and you are, as part of my chosen family, an aunt. Both your wife and you are so close to me that I'm nervous and worried because I want to make sure that we do your story right. And I'm feeling that responsibility in many ways, but I know that our conversation is going to be very much like how we would be in person, and it's natural and it feels right. And I'm nervous, but I also just want to say that I miss you so much. I miss being around you and being in your presence. So, yeah, big hugs and love, and we'll be able to talk to each other soon. So,
Yeah.
let's start more on the bigger level, because people are listening are going to go, Karen Hofmann, oh, I need to hear this story. And other people are like, who the heck is Karen Hofmann? So, Karen, we have this larger LGBTQ plus rainbow family. Where do you fit underneath this umbrella?
Oh, um, I've thought about this like all my life, and and I like although I was called queer for many years, even as a child, uh, and at that time it was not a nice term, and I became very defensive about it. But now I'm sort of taking it on and saying, yeah, I'm queer. Just leave it at that, because I don't like to put myself in a box. I don't like to circumscribe myself. It's been done too often to me, and I would just like to remain sort of diffuse without being too particular, because, well, I'm many-sided, and which is not, I'm not being mysterious about it. It's just that I don't like to be categorized. So I accept the term just queer and leave it at that. And yeah, I'm married to a woman, so that makes me a lesbian. And yeah, I presented as a straight guy for many years, so that makes me straight. And yeah, I hung out with a lot of gay guys, so some people assumed I was gay. So I mean, I go right across the alphabet, and it depends on how I'm seen or how I feel, and where I'm comfortable at that moment, and where I feel safe. So I don't like to just put up a sign and say, this is all I am and this is me. I just like to say that, I'm Karen, and I am who I am at this moment. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And I try to fit in, I try to adapt, and that's what confrontation. And in order to be productive and get on with my life, and have a safe and productive life, and as a result, my identities seem to have changed to people, not to me, of course, but to people. And so when somebody asks me, where do I fit on the spectrum? I said, well, I don't really know. He said, where do you think I fit on the spectrum?
Yeah,
And I'll
exactly.
leave it at that.
Yeah, well, and I find it
Let
interesting.
people think. Yeah, yeah, let people think about it. I throw it back at people. You know, it's like when people ask me about, do you believe in God? And and that's sort of like, oh, that sort of throws them back for a minute. So it's a reflex I've developed, which is sort of defensive, but at the same time, I think it stirs the pot to get people. It makes people feel uncomfortable because they have to think, and they just want to be told. They don't want to actually think about themselves or relate to it in terms of their internal life, because they don't want some things. They don't want to internalize some things because that feels threatening to them for whatever reason. That's their problem. Identify queer. Okay,
Yeah. I find it interesting that
that's
you
a long preamble.
Yeah, I find it interesting that you've chosen the word queer because when you were growing up and when I was growing up, that word queer was such a negative word. And it was a word that I know I didn't want to have attached to me for a long time. And I have difficulties with that word. Was there a time where you were able to say that that word meant something
Hmm.
different in the past, but now there's that positive quality to it? Did you find a time in your life when that transition
But
in your mind happened with that word itself?
what's interesting is that, from my perspective, when I was called queer, or whatever other terms, are called a girl, which I am, which is kind of strange. Why? So why should I object to that? But but I'm supposed to object to that, right? But this is all reflecting back as a child. I didn't speak English, and I spoke only German. I learned English in elementary school, and of course, so I was the queer kid because I was different, not just because I was queer, but I was hanging out with girls. I didn't speak English very well, and uh, and people who realized that I was German, they either picked on me because they figured I was a Nazi, or they picked on me because they figured I was Jewish, or they picked on me because I couldn't speak English well, or picked on me because I played with the girls. In other words, I was queer right across the spectrum for whatever reason queer means. So queer wasn't just for me uh, an identity issue. It was an identity, Jewish, German speaking, not English speaking English. So it's like, yeah, I'm queer in many respects. I have a target on me. Which target would you like to shoot at? and, and so queer for me was the original queer meaning different. You are different. You're alien. Of course, I went to high school in the States, so I had a green card that said alien. That didn't help either. So it's like, yeah, I've gone through life always being the outsider, which is okay. I mean, I work with that. I mean, sometimes you can work that to your advantage. So so that's why I use the word. Come across to accept the word queer, understanding that there are all kinds of queer things that people feel or express or feel about themselves, or how they feel about themselves, or how they see themselves, or how they see other people. So it's really a very neutral term. I know that it's become very specific for people like me because it's usually it became used as the opening line for a physical attack. It really meant it was like rounding up the posse. One guy would start calling me queer, and then others would chime in, and then things would happen. So yeah, there are bad connotations, but at the same time, I've taken it on as recognizing that I am queer in many ways. And it's like, yeah, so what? That's not my problem. The problem is that people don't know how to deal with queerness. That's their problem. My problem is I have to avoid the violence and the threats that go with that. So, but that doesn't say that queer is bad. Not to me. So I always turn it around. I always look on that other side. Yeah. Next.
with with you, you know that we have our blood family and we have our parents and we have our aunts and uncles, cousins, children. And for many, we hold them close. And for others, they're just people within our lives that we had to coexist. Then we have in our community the chosen family, the ones that we choose to be around and we love, and we keep close to our hearts. And with your wife and yourself, you here in Edmonton, we have a close knit family, a chosen family. Have, when did you realize in your life that you had the opportunity to build a chosen family as well as your blood relatives as well?
Um, Blood relatives is a problem right there, but so we won't go into that right now.
Mhm.
Chosen family actually is an Edmonton phenomenon. Um, we came here. Pam had her cancer treatment done, and as part of her recovery, we were looking at joining an activity group as part of her rehab for physical rehab. And so we joined the Rainbow Square Dance group, and that's where I realized that the people I was meeting we had a connection right away. Even though they didn't really know everything about me, it didn't matter. It was like, everybody felt we're in this together. We're all different. We're all queer in different ways, and it was okay. So we gathered ourselves together, and that, I guess, that's back in 2002, I suppose, when we started with square dancing, and from there it spread out into working with the committee and all the spin-offs that were associated with the Pride Center, and we started making connections everywhere, and that's how we sort of connected with the community. And in that community, we had people that we kept seeing a number of times, including the drag community, and some of the people that came and left, but are still like nephews of ours, who we associate with and we party with still, even though they're not necessarily any more part of the drag community, but they're still part either of the leather or whatever, or the what do you call it, the all those people who who've glommed on to us because we're very accepting. And I think people realize that we want to connect with people. It's been something I've wanted to do all my life, and it's always been a bit of a risky situation to do that, but it's not risky now. So we have, that's how we sort of came into having adopted all these people into a family. And you're right, we are the aunts, and we have nieces and nephews, and that's how Pam and I refer to you, as a nephew, not a niece. And so it's sort of evolved that way. And it was just, yeah, it feels good. I mean, it feels natural. Now, it's only because of our age. Now, when we were in a bar and the light was a little bit down, we hang out with these people, and they're all talking about their parents, and their parents are younger than us. And when it became apparent how old we were, people were sort of shocked. It's like, my God, you mean my grandmother? But age is just a number.
Exactly.
Or as I tell people, after I turned 50, I counted backwards. So next month I'll be 27 again, because I'm counting down from 50, not up. So it's family.
Yeah, when I was teaching elementary school, my mother was teaching in junior high at the same school. And so the little kids would be asking me how old I was in order to figure out how old my mother was. So at that time, I was in my late 20s, and I said, I'm celebrating the 8th anniversary of my 20th birthday. And the kids would go, oh, my brother is 20 too,
Yeah.
like 20 as well. And then at the end of the year, they come up and go, Mr. Parsons, Mr. P, you lied to us. And I'm like, I lied? And they're like, yeah, we know how to do math now. So they were able to figure out ages from that. And so I always celebrate the 30th anniversary of my 10th birthday or something like that. You mentioned coming to Edmonton in the early 2000s. Was that the first
Mhm.
time that you were able to live your life as Karen? Was that the time,
Uh,
or did that
s-
take
uh,
place in
uh,
Ottawa before you
in
arrived?
Ottawa, in Ottawa, back when we went to university in Kingston, Queens, and then from there we moved up to Ottawa, and our daughter was born in Kingston. Our son was born in Ottawa, and by the time I was in my 30s, um, I was trying to come to terms with coming out of myself. And we'll talk about coming out later, I suppose.
Mhm.
But I was looking around some means of coming out, but again, it was a matter of how do I do it safely. And so I joined a group, which was TriS, which is a Society for the Second Self. It's like the Illusions here in Ottawa, mostly cross-dressers. Met a number of trans people there, and they were trans people who had been basically persona non grata in the gender clinic, like me. I was not welcomed in the gender clinic. Um, I had a referral to the gender clinic after a suicide attempt, and but I realized it wasn't going anywhere. Being an insider in the medical community, I knew what was going to happen by being referred to a gender clinic. And because the question I had was, are you going to divorce your wife and do you have a boyfriend? And that's really all they were concerned about. Um, they weren't really concerned about any of my particular issues, my life experience. And of course, the gender clinic was run by guys, men, who are going to teach you how to be a woman. So I said, what? Anyway, we called that the Jurassic version, being to the Clark Institute back in Toronto. But I'm off on a tangent, can you tell? But so I associated with a cross-dressing community, and we met twice a month. And I and another person actually were the spearheads. We sort of made arrangements with different restaurants, telling them ahead of time, like who's coming and what we need. We had our own room, and we had dinner. So we had money to spend, so it was fine. They invited us to spend money, so there was no real issue. There were a number of restaurants that were run by the gay community, so obviously there was no problem there. So that gave me a chance to be out in public as Karen. And my name Karen actually I'm on a tangent again, but where did the name Karen come from?
Let's go there. I'm
There's a
fine with
number of
this. You know that.
there's one particular story. I was working on a patient, an elderly woman who was sight impaired, and my hair was always very long. And so she could see that I had long hair, and I was talking her through a procedure. It was just it wasn't under general local anesthetic, and it was a very frightening procedure. And it was difficult, challenging. So I was chatting her through, basically hypnotizing her through. And when she was finished, she said, "Oh, you're very nice. You're very Karen. She went caring, no." And it was like, "Oh, Karen, I'll take that." And of course, my scrub nurse that was with me had to jump in and apologize. "Oh, Dr. Hoffman is married and has a woman and children." So she was defending my masculinity, which I thought was hilarious. But that's where the name Karen comes from. But so I used that in my coming out phase, and I actually bought a second name. So I had a name called Karen Hope, Hope, because that was sort of what I was aspiring to. So that was my coming out name, and of course I kept the Karen part. The hope was realized, so I don't need the hope. But in short, that was the in between, because it was like confessing to a lesser crime of being a crossdresser as opposed to confessing to be a trans, because I was always afraid that being trans really would mean the end of my career, my family, my marriage. and people would lose everything, become a pariah, so it was not a good way to go,
Yeah.
unless you were prepared to actually go entirely, leave. Anyway,
Yeah.
enough said about that.
Yeah. And I should say right now that this is a trilogy of conversations that we're going to do for Pride Month. We're having your conversation now. Next week, we will be talking to your wife, Pam. And then the week after that, to finish Pride Month, will be both of you together discussing your
Oh
experience,
boy.
your love for each other. That will be interesting for sure. But I want people who do not know you and are just meeting you for the first time to understand that you have been married to your wife for over 50 years now. And to me,
Yeah.
you are the ultimate love story, the ups and downs and how you've come together. And it's within this chosen family, yourself and your wife, as well as our close friends, Dwayne and Larry, that I learned how to love another person through the four of you. And I also learned how important it was to be accepting of love. I knew people loved me before, but I never embraced it. But I learned it from the four of you. And I will always be appreciative of that. When it comes to love, when did you fall in love with your wife? Let's go back to the Genesis. Go back to the United States, how you met Pam and how she became part of your life.
We were 15 years old. Pam was in grade 10. I was in grade 10. Pam was in grade 9. And after school, we had this activity called the debate club. And I had a group of friends from, in a debate group. A number of us were also tennis players as well. So there were a number of things that got connected with a lot of common. And again, it was always an effort to try to stay connected with people. And so we had events together as a group, and we would go together to places as a group. So it was like group dating because we had a lot of common interests. So we all just hung together. So we went to the movies and did things, went to a picnic together. And there was about more than a dozen of us, maybe 15 of us. And people would come and go. It was a very loose group. And eventually, Pam and I sort of took notice of it. I think she noticed me first. She'll tell you. She'll tell you. Our stories are a little bit different, as you can imagine. But it was the first time I could feel safe being close to somebody. It was with Pam, and it brings me back to again. I mean, everything for me is connected to everything else. I mentioned that we left Germany when I was 3 years old, and the first 3 years of my life, my grandmother was looking after me, and then I was taken away from her. My parents were both working, so my caretaker was basically my grandmother. She was, to me, very important. Now, I don't really remember her. I mean, 3 years, but you don't remember your first 3 years of life. You have impressions, though. I'm sure you have impressions. My impression comes back to me in a dream that I've had from time to time. I'm staggering down a hallway and I'm dragging something. I'm looking down at my feet and I've got bare feet and it's small feet. I'm a toddler and I'm dragging something down the hall. I look to the right and I see this short, white woman in a kitchen stirring a pot, and she skims the top and she's tasting it. And it's my grandmother. And she turns to me and she walks towards me. And my grandmother was only like 5 foot tall, but she was 5 foot wide too. And so I'm walking up to her, but I'm looking up at her like she's a mountain, and I'm looking up at her, and I can see she has this sort of sad eyes, but she's got this little smile, but a big round face that just fills up my vision. And I'm looking at her eyes, and I see sparkles in her eyes. And then I look at the sparkles, and I'm sort of drawn into the sparkles. And then suddenly I see that it's like the cosmos. I'm looking at I'm looking at the universe. And that's the end of that impression. How does it relate to Pam? Well, when I was with Pam and we were getting closer, and we were actually like physically close and looking at each other very closely, I sensed the sparkles in her eyes. And it was like closing a loop. Like, not that she's my grandmother, but it's a spiritual experience that there's more to here than I can take in. It's like you cannot take in the cosmos. It's just too vast. But you're aware that there's something there which is beyond your ability to grasp. And that mystery is what you're drawn to, and you feel a sense of security. It's like when you go to the mountains and you realize you feel so small and the mountains are so large. And like, wow, you're awestruck. Well, that's it. And that's not falling in love. It's a realization of how alive you are. It's feeling alive. And at the same time, I knew that Pam was very interested in me, but I was scared about drawing her into me because of the downside that she'd be seen as a lesbian eventually. And that's not a good thing for her. Because I knew eventually I was either going to come out or I was going to be dead, or I'd be killed or something. But, it was not necessarily going to have a happy ending. So right from the beginning, I had this black cloud over me all the time about, is there a future? Or what is the future? Is there a future at all? And if somebody's with me, somebody who I care for is with me, what's going to happen to them? And what have I done to bring that misfortune on them? And it's not their fault. So that's how we met. And she's the one who initiated kissing me first. And when she kissed me, it really left me in an awkward position of, yes, I want this, and no, I shouldn't. Yes, I should. Yes, I want it. Back and forth. And it was like, I want to give it to her because she deserves something. She deserves this. Yes, but she doesn't deserve the bad part. She doesn't deserve the grief. I want her to have the joy, but I don't want her to have the grief. How do I avoid the grief? I mean, I'm going to have the grief. I have grief all my life. So how do I protect her from the grief? And I realized you can't do that for anybody. They have to deal with that. But at that time, when we first met, when we were 15, and it was like, am I in love? And I says, yes, I'm in love, but I thought I was supposed to have a thing about guys. Isn't that how that's supposed to work? Like, if I'm a woman, shouldn't I have the hots for guys? And I never did. And it's like, what did I miss there? Like, how is that? I mean, talk about queer. It says, oh, jeez. I mean, how weird am I? Like, weird beyond weird. And anyway, I had lots of discussions with God about that. They weren't very nice words, I had to say. But that was a crisis. I mean, my life at that time, every day was a crisis. It was like every day I wanted to find some good reason to live. Something good happens each day, so that makes living worthwhile for that day. Something to look forward to, that tomorrow something good is going to happen, and that will make that day worthwhile. So that's how I went from day to day to day. And then Pam was along the way, and it was like, gosh, this is nice. We shared a locker, so we put our books together. We were both academics, so we were both in the sort of academic section of high school. And so we put our our jackets and stuff were at a different locker. It was a bigger locker, and all of our books together was in a smaller locker. So basically, we were already shacking up in lockers at school. But we were very quickly seen as a couple by college, that we had something going. Even though both of us were very serious. I mean, we're very, very somber, very academic and very philosophical, but at the same time, I was being extremely defensive. But I was working with it. I was going with it. And then, of course, after graduation, I left because I was Canadian. I came back to Canada. So I left Los Angeles, came back to Canada, went to Queen's University. And the first year was very difficult without Pam. And the second year, I went back to Pam, I says, I can't go back without you. You know, here I'm in Los Angeles, and I want to come clean with her and tell her what's happening with me, who I am, why I'm so stirred up, why I'm such a basket case, why I'm so neurotic. And I still couldn't blurt it out because I was afraid of losing her. And I was afraid of hurting her too, because how would she feel about herself if she felt that, you know, she's in love with me and I'm telling her, well, you know, actually I'm a woman. And says, oh, well, what does that, how can she reflect that on herself? What does that mean about her? So I'm thinking and counter thinking and all this machination, all this plotting, all this mind theater that goes on in your brain. You know that how many lives can you live at one moment, and how many plot lines? Because as a child, when somebody asks me a question, I have to think, what answer do they want?
Mm,
Not what's the answer, is what answer are they expecting?
yeah.
Because if I say something they don't expect, it'll draw attention to me that I'm queer, right?
Mm,
So I have to outguess people, and the people were adults. And of course, when I outguessed them, I just had contempt for them because they're such idiots, you know, and they're so could be easily manipulated, and they don't realize they're being manipulated. And it's like I'm supposed to respect these people. I'm supposed to trust them because I know if I tell them the truth, you know, the ceiling will fall in on me. Anyway, so much for authority. But so Pam and I had this going for a number of years. We got married in 1968 finally, and then we both came back to Queens, and I started medical school, and she finished her English and history at Queens, and we had a wonderful time as being double income, no kids, the dinks, right? Dink, and then of course we had our first child, our daughter, in Kingston. I was delighted. Yeah, but to begin with, having a daughter, when Pam was pregnant, I was afraid. What if it's a guy? What if it's a boy? How am I going to raise a boy?
Yeah.
How do I do that? You know, like a girl, yeah, fine, but boy, anyway,
Yeah.
that
So
worked out.
I'm going to jump in and ask you a question here. So you mentioned
Yeah,
before about how you were nervous and scared about bringing Pam into your life, and you knowing that at some point it was either going to be death or living your life as a woman. Obviously, during this time, the idea of marriage came in. You did get married. You did get married. So you made that commitment that come hell or high water, this is going to take place. I can definitely understand that. You know, that makes sense because here's your security blanket, here's your cosmos, here's your other soul. Making the decision to have
yeah,
children had to be perhaps even more scary because now you're adding other people to what's taking place within your mind. And I just want to tell our listeners that you've ended up having a daughter and then later on you decided to have a son. So you have both of them in your life. So with your children,
okay,
do
yeah.
they call you mom? Do they call you dad? Have obviously at the beginning they've called you dad. Do they continue to call you dad to today?
It was easy for our daughter because she it didn't take long for her to figure out. You know, she realized that I was not by any means sort of a typical father figure. Um, I was we had we our daughter and I had such a rapport that her girlfriends were suspicious that there was some kind of incest going on.
Mm,
You know, and they were always speculating about, you know, you and your dad, you know, you're too close. And for her, it was like, yeah, of course we're close. It's like, you know, and of course I didn't, you know, I, but once she realized that there was such a thing as trans people, it didn't take long for her to connect that. Oh, my dad. Okay, so she didn't have an issue with that because she had a whole history with me. I mean, I'd been there, you know, since day one. I was the first one to hold her after she was born. She was my arms right after she was born. Right. Same thing with our son. Um, uh, our son was he's he's on the he's on the Asperger scale. You know, he's an engineer. He's an electrical engineer, He's got a lot of those issues about black and white. It's like a computer engineer. Everything has to be, precise and no gray stuff. Whereas with our daughter, we could talk about philosophical things that are very gray and obscure. And our son would just go to sleep at the dinner table. But you have to realize that when our son was growing up as a child, he had a lot of he had difficulty. He had a lot of discomfort in his body. He had a lot of allergies, and for him, seeing the world was kind of frightening. And he would come to me, for protection. And sure, he'd go to Pam too, but whenever he was having a nightmare, and he'd come to our side of the bed, I would be hugging him, and I'd be holding him, and I'd be comforting him, and I'd be reading to him. So we had a history of an intimate connection of a parent with a child, and it's nothing. There's no sexuality attached to that. It's that you care for a child, and whether it's your blood, offspring per se, they both are, of course. But even if you have an adopted child, or even if you have an adopted family, you have the same sense of connectedness and the sense of trust and feeling safe, the cocooning effect, and our son really enjoyed when he was very young to be hugged and held tight, which is something which autistic people really need as well. So our son is on that spectrum somewhere. So he didn't have any particular issue. All he wanted to know was that, well, if I'm a woman, does that mean me? Does that mean that he's a woman? I said, no. Yeah, you do. Oh, okay. Well, that's fine. Yeah, it was just like 0 and 1, like yes or no. There was nothing in between. So our son refers to me as Karen. My daughter refers to me sometimes as Dad, sometimes as Oma, because that's in homage to my grandmother, who's a Katerina, which is, and again, a connection with Karen, my name. So it's there's a sort of a sense of, when I say integrity, it's a sense of oneness. It's a sense of wholesomeness, an inclusiveness, of sharing, of mutual support, and trust, of course, is always an issue, because trust is a matter of how much you say and when do you say it and how do you say it. Because you can be. Trust doesn't necessarily mean that you blurt out everything. You have to have the connection and understand what is it you're talking about and why you're talking. It has to have the proper context. So in terms of parenting, our children have always been, we've been close to our children, they've been close to us. At work, my daughter refers, when people at work were asking our daughter, she says, well, my dad's a lesbian. And I was like, what? What does that mean? Again, it's the queerness. That is queer. Being a male lesbian is like, yeah, that's queer.
Yeah, yeah. So we're talking about the 60s, the 70s, and the 80s, and you're now in Canada. Are there transgender icons that are there people in the news that you were looking up to that were helping you along your way to accepting yourself? Or at this time, were you battling what was preconceived as to what was transgender to what you were experiencing in your own life?
In 1952, Christine Jorgensen made the newspaper. I mean, I was 4.5 years old. I was too young to read. I tell you, I was barely understanding English as it was, but I could see pictures in the newspaper, and I could hear people talking about Christine Jorgensen. Chris went to Denmark and came back. I'm not the only one. And there I am, 4.5 years old, and my mother was on my case because I always behaved a bit odd, and I was obviously different from my boy cousin, who was a year older than me. I was nothing like that, and I think my parents were afraid that I was going to turn out to be gay, because I was very clinging to my mother because I was scared. I was already aware that I wasn't fitting in anywhere. And this is before I even went to school, So, I got to deal with this. I got to hide this somehow. I have to deal with it. And it was later in June in the following year. I'm almost 5 years old. And we're driving in the backcountry outside Brantford somewhere. And on the radio, as we're driving, the car radio comes on with the announcement that Ethel and Julius Rosenberg, who were the so-called atomic bomb spies for Russia, were electrocuted at Sing Sing. And I remembered this very clearly because my mother got into a whole raving about the spies and about criminals and about perverts and mentally ill people, and they should all be locked up, and including Christine Jorgensen and all her type. And it was like, oh shit, that's the end of my life. And she would say things about like people. If I had a child like that, if I had something like that, I would suffocate it in its crib. And she wouldn't let. Okay, I can see that. And I felt that we were driving outside in the countryside, and I realized that people, if they were tired of a pet, they would go for a drive in the countryside and drop the pet off, at the side in a ditch, and then drive home and let the animal, fend for itself, let nature take over. And I realized that's why we're out driving. They're going to pull over, I'm going to get out of the car, and they're going to drive away. And while I'm thinking this, I'm driving by a farm, and I realized, I'll ask the farmer to adopt me as a daughter. Okay, that might work. So I was already planning. I was already thinking in terms of how am I going to survive? I mean, I can't run away. I mean, I can't fight. I can't run away. I can give in. I can pretend. I can fight, fight, fawn, or finally flop. And flop is dissociate and go psychotic, which was always a concern of mine, because at what point in time might I lose my mind? So I had to prepare for that possibility. And so it was a matter of, okay, I have to make plans about suicide. And how can I kill myself? Because I want to go to sleep and not wake up, because sleep was my, that was where I could find the relief, and I could live in myself in sleep. And whatever happens to me in my sleep, that's me. It's okay. That's safe. I'm not afraid of myself. I'm only afraid of what's out there, not what's in here. But I have to realize that the outside is going to be a physical threat to me, and there may come a time where I have to pull the plug somehow and leave. But it's going to be on my terms. Hopefully I wouldn't. I figured when the beating started and I had assaults and things happened to me, and I realized that it might get to the point where people are big enough that I might even get killed by accident during doing a beating, and so I had to be prepared for how to cope with that. At what point am I going to execute that plan? And it was just one of those things that was on the list of things that have to be worked out and thought about ahead of time. So suicide was always suicide only made it up 3 times, but often there were other things that would keep the suicide at a lower level, second, third, fourth, choice. So it was, and that's how you get through life. Life is a battle, and some people don't survive that battle.
Yeah, you've been very open within our chosen family group with your previous thoughts and battles when it comes to suicide and those type of things. What would you say to someone who is listening to us today and entertaining those thoughts when it comes to suicide? What would you say to that person as words of advice, words of hope?
I had people in my past who I knew who were going through difficult times with their family. They had depression, and they had all kinds of conflict and emotional issues. They weren't necessarily, in the LGBT, continuum, but people would come to me and they would sound me off, sound me out, because I was very, very open, very friendly that way. So I had actually a classmate of mine came to me with issues, and he actually came to us, Pam and me, at one point, and he went on to commit suicide. I had a technician who was having problems. He would come to me, and he was actually visit us in Ottawa, and he ended up committing suicide. So I've dealt with, and I've had another person here in Edmonton who I wouldn't say counseling, but he came to me for opinions, and I was trying to counsel him about suicide issues, but he went on to commit suicide. So it's almost like I'm afraid to talk to people about suicide, because I don't necessarily have a big track record of saving people, and yet I always make a point of talking about suicide, because I'm afraid people don't talk enough about it. A big deal is to talk about it. That takes a lot of the pressure off. If people realize that you are thinking about suicide, if people realize that it's on your list of possibilities, if people realize that, not that you're going to commit suicide immediately, but it could happen, it means I encourage people to talk about it, so that it'll open the dialogue with other people, because you never know who's going to be the one who can help you. It may not necessarily be the one who you think is closest to you. In fact, some people who are very close to you may actually not want to hear anything about suicide, because they can't face the possibility that you're going to die. Sometimes you need a person who is a little bit distant, maybe a friend of a friend, but somebody who is more neutral, perhaps, and to be able to ventilate it, not be afraid to talk about suicide, and don't be afraid to ask people if they're suicidal, or if they feel down, or if they feel like life isn't worth living. There's all these other little euphemisms that people use, because I think about it for a long time before. It's not something which we automatically do and figure, oh, today's a good day to die. No, it doesn't work that way. I think it builds up to the point where it becomes a recurring theme, and then eventually it becomes so strong. And then on top of that, you add things like shame and self-hate and fear of being dismissed or stigmatized, or fear of being cut off from people, of fear that people don't want to talk to you, fear of losing connection with people. That is, I think, the worst part. For people to push people into a suicide means you have to be isolated. But by not being isolated, you're hanging on to people. You're giving them the hope to hang on, and finding ways to connect with other people they feel that they can trust, people they feel who can at least listen to what. And if it's not immediate, like if it's not, you don't have a terminal illness, and you're in constant pain, there are circumstances where, planned suicide, I think, is appropriate. But most times it's not. Most time it can be dealt with in a social setting with other people, in an environment which is supportive and loving.
Well, and I would imagine, and I know this for sure, that you mentioned your track record, but I can tell you that your track record of the people in your life is very high in the positive case, because people have learned from your story and have listened to what you have said. And I know that people listening to this podcast today and listening to what you just said right now, you've saved a life. You've given people hope with what you have just said. In your conversation, you said the words "open the dialogue." When did you open the dialogue with Pam? When it came to yourself, your true self, and with what had been going on within you all of these years?
Back in Ottawa again, it comes back to, I was mentioning about my association with the cross-dressing community, and it wasn't enough. I mean, it was like I can't just be myself 2 days a month. There are 31 days a month. I have to be there every day, and I am here every day, but I can't be out all the time. At that time, So finally, Pam realized that I was really having uh, issues, and I mean, she knew all about the cross-dressing crowd. That was all public, but she realized there was more to it, and that I was just driving myself into the ground. So she finally laid down the law. I mean, Pam, it was like I either get help or she's going to leave,
Mm.
and that was pulling the plug. That was that was the gun to the head. It was like, I'll get help. I like, I'll do anything for you. It's like, yeah, okay, oh, for me. He said, yeah, okay, I live for you. It's true, but sometimes living for you is very, very difficult. He said, yeah, but get help so you can live with me. Okay. And that's when I really came out to her. I said, well, this is really what it is. It's a gender issue. It's not just, a fetish. It's not just make believe. It's not just play acting. It's not just dressing up and going out. And no, it's not theater. It's me. This is who I am. And for her, it was like, well, yeah, okay, so let's
Yeah.
let's deal with this. Oh, okay. Why didn't I do this sooner?
Yeah.
So, and that was after my second suicide attempt, and I realized, okay, I need to get a referral to the gender clinic and see what I can get done about this. Realizing that was not going to go anywhere. I mean, gender clinics are they're useless. But that's how I came out to Pam. It was just like that. It was like it was her ultimatum. Tell me what's going on, or I'm going to leave. Okay, I'll tell you. And
Were you ultimately surprised that
are you
that
still
was
going
her
to say? You know,
were you ultimately surprised that that was her reaction, that she was like, I want you to be your authentic self? And
no,
yeah.
no, she knew something. I mean, when we got married, people were sort of looking about. You got married?
Mm.
He married a girl? Oh, yeah. Oh, people who didn't really know me that well, didn't know Pam. Like Pam and I are an odd couple. We really fit together in a
Yeah.
nice way. And, and even my classmates, for 2 years when I was in pre-med at Queens, I kept talking about my girlfriend, and the guys were saying, yeah, sure, yeah, right, girlfriend in California, yeah, right, girlfriend. And I never dated, right? And it was like, oh yeah, you're one of those guys. Yeah, okay, oh, yeah. And I always had, as a guy, I gave off gay vibes. I was feminine, which for people see something, whatever they see, that's what they see. They make their assumption of what that means. People in Ottawa were kind of disappointed that I transitioned. They figured, oh well, I might get lucky and connect with this gay guy. Said, no, that's not what it is.
Hmm.
So so as because I've always had, I won't say always, but from time to time I've had a gay guy come on to me. It didn't bother me per se, but it was sort of disappointing. Like why is he coming? Oh yeah, he figures I must be gay. I didn't. I mean, I wasn't offended. To a certain extent, I was sort of oh, that's nice, but why don't the girls come on to me? But some girls did, but for other girls, that masculine, strong arm character, being kind of whatever guyness means. But it was, I'm getting lost in a tangent here, but it was the coming out. Pam always knew there was odd. We fit together because I was able to adapt to her, and she was able to adapt to me. And she wasn't a typical, pom pom girl, from beach babe, from California. She was very bookish and academic, and she was, she's a strong core and a whole bit. He says, yeah, she's solid. I can hang on to that. That's, she's stable. I'm not, but and so to a certain extent, we were that good couple. And I'm not going to talk about her right now. She'll talk about herself. But people realize that I was a bit off. Always I was not quite. There was something odd about me, something queer about me, but not being able to quite define what that is, because I was able to distract. I was able to hide. Yeah.
Yeah, both of
So
you
that's
are
how it
the
worked.
both of you are the ultimate jigsaw puzzle piece. You found the ultimate piece to connect both of you together. So you've now told Pam what has been going on within you. Um, you've now made the decision that in order to keep Pam, in order to keep your marriage, your relationship going, there's going to have to be change. And so you've made the decision to live yourself as your authentic self. That must mean that forevermore, everything fit together and everything was perfect. And you were able to live your life perfectly as Karen. Am I right?
When I'm about 40 years old, back in 1988. Um, and after the gender clinic fiasco, which I call a fiasco because it was really useless, I realized what I had to sort of recalibrate and change my plans. That I knew I was going to come out, but it was only a matter of when and where.
Hmm.
And it wasn't going to happen in Ottawa. And it was going to be a matter of how long can I hang on to what I have in the way I am and make the most of it. And everyone our daughter and our son, their friends all knew that they had a weird parent, and it was a matter of, okay, how far can I push this and not come out socially,
Mhm.
right? Not come out in public. And so when we moved to Edmonton, because I was working at the Cross, that was fine. And I was sort of laying the preparation here, and that was like good timing. So I knew that the law might be on my side when it comes to a transition at work. So I was laying all the groundwork, planning ahead. And then Pam was diagnosed with stage 2A cancer of the right tonsil, with a spread to a lymph node, and that threw me for a loop. And at that moment, when I got that diagnosis, I came out. I dropped the facade, make believe. There was no more hiding per se. There was no more lying. There was no more deception going on. It was like I had to focus all my attention, on Pam. And so people around me at work suddenly realized that I was different because I was, my hair was longer. I was, I had flamboyant dressing, not dresses per se, but my OR material was different colors. Assumed that I was a woman, and and the staff were a little bit taken aback by that. But most of the staff came around. Others did not, and the ones who did not were my colleagues, who were lived in a box and they couldn't get themselves out of a box. And so anyway, Pam went through all her treatments very successfully, and I continued working at the Cross for another while. And at the Cross, the physicians work on a yearly basis, a contract, a 1-year contract, which is renewable every 6 months. But my contract was not renewed, so I had to leave that. But it was okay because I had already been doing locums work out in the community with two other companies, and everyone in the private sector, they wanted me. They couldn't get enough of me. There's a lot of work out there to be done, and so I made that another transition from hospital work to private work, private office work, and that worked out fine. And to begin with, I took time off. I worked half time to begin with because I was looking after Pam at home. I was basically, her nurse as well, doing everything I could. And gradually, as she got better, I started working full time, the gay community. So that brings us up to 2002. And I mentioned about the square dancing group. And from there on, it was moving forward and getting involved in all the gay and lesbian issues in the community, including Women's Space and the Pride Center and the Police Liaison Committee and anything else that happened to come up dealing with gay issues. So that brings us up almost to the present. And from now, of course, I'm fully retired. And so we're just way through this COVID fiasco and hoping to get back to the bar scene.
Yeah, exactly.
And,
Well,
and
earlier in the conversation,
and print out all our.
earlier in the
No, you're
conversation,
gone.
you were talking about how you would have people, friends that would see you like, oh my gosh, you're the same age as my mother or grandmother. But this is a time in your life when both you and Pam started actively going to the bars or the pubs, the junctions, and taking part in that life, which may not have been the life that you had before. So just in an overall sense, how important was the pub and bar scene when it came to your life transitioning, being accepted for who you really are? Can you talk about the importance of the
Well,
pub scene?
well, just for a moment to go back to Ottawa because it links. When we were in Ottawa, at the end of the week, we'd have our TGIFs, at work, and I was in the X-ray department in a hospital. Most of the technologists are women, and the clerical staff mostly women. And at the end of the week, a whole group would go out to do TGIF, and I joined them. And I was considered at one point. I was considered the honorary woman. It was like yeah, right.
Yeah.
So I was already like that was my social crowd, going to a bar with the girls. I made fun. I said I'm there to have a good time, but that was sort of the bridge of yeah, I'm here, but I'm not here. Like yeah, okay, don't mind me. I'm having my drink, but I'm hanging out with my girls. As one of the girls. Coming here, I just continued that, but now I'm out. I don't have to pretend that I'm anything else except who I am, and I'm just accepting people for who they are. And when we were at when we were at a junction, I would go to people who were I didn't necessarily know them. I'd go up and I'd introduce myself. I'm Karen Hofmann, this is my wife Pam, and I would make connections that way. Just not that I necessarily knew them, but I wanted to introduce myself. I was trying to recruit people to come to a junction, keep it going, and we would go at the end of the week again. We would I'd end up picking up Pam, and we'd go to the junction at like 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and we'd hang out there. And I remember the Roost. We used to go to the Roost as well, and we were in the party scene, and we did that at the end of the week, and we'd have our dinner, we'd have our drinks, and then we'd come home. Because it was just the two of us. It was great. And then we'd meet people. Some were our friends, some were new people, some new friends. So that was a continuation, really, of what we were doing in Ottawa. But now I was out. In Ottawa, I wasn't out per se, but to me, I was out. And for Pam, I was out. So it's so when I said that's why it felt just natural. Okay, of course we're going to go to the bar. So what if the age is just a number, it's that we feel young. Now that I'm going to be 73, I feel younger now than I did when I was 40. Yeah. Because I don't have to deal with all this other shit, hanging around. Mm-hmm. It's like the board, the board is clear. There's nothing else. There's no other agendas. It's all right there. It says, yeah, good. I don't have to play any more games. Get what you see is what you get. And whoever you are, I'll accept that too. So now let's have a good time and have a drink. Mind you, perhaps I shouldn't drink that much. I don't drink that much anymore, but I will once the bars open up and we get out there with our margaritas.
I think we're all going to be like that. I think their first couple of weeks or months.
And we'd like to get back. We'd like to get back into square dancing too. And that brings up another story. Again, there was. It's a gay and lesbian crowd, square dancing, and when we're dancing, the guys wear a sash. Whoever plays the guy's role wears a sash, and the girls don't wear a sash. So, and of course, the caller calls in terms of boys do this and the gals do that, and boys do this and the gals do that. And at one point, we're all lined up, and I'm facing my partner, and who's a girl in this case. And the caller calls out for what the who's a girl has got a sash on, so she's playing the guy's role, and I'm supposed to do the girl's role, and so the caller calls out what the gals are supposed to do. And I'm standing there, and I'm sort of like am I the girl doing the girl's part, or am I the boy doing the girl? Am I the boy doing the boy's part? And she just cracks up because she could see in my mind, it was like, I can't figure out what the hell, who the hell am I? What am I supposed to be doing?
I'm combusting here at this moment. Yeah.
I don't know which way am I supposed to go now. Am I going right or left? It's like because you have to do it, and so it's like it was funny because I mean some of this gender play really is hilarious. It's like, why are we getting ourselves so tied up in knots? Like what why?
Yeah.
Anyway, it's a convention, but why are we conventional? We're not conventional. We're on a spectrum, and we're all different in different ways, and and for that matter, we even evolve and develop over time different ways. So why are we so hung up on specifics about how we're supposed to fit in? Anyway, I recall that. Yeah. Go ahead.
I'm going to throw out some words to you, and word association. I want you to talk about what comes to mind when I say some of these words. Okay.
Okay.
Edmonton.
Safe.
Yeah. Ottawa.
Safety.
Ottawa.
Uphill climb.
Religion.
I took my arts options at Queen's University with at the Queen's Theological in classrooms with ministers in training, because I wanted to learn, what are Christians being taught? What are Christian ministers being taught in the United Church? Because that's where all the United Church ministers graduate from. And I wanted to learn, what are they being taught about Jews, about the Bible and everything else? Because it's like my Bible, it's written in Hebrew and Aramaic. It's like not English. And so I took ancient Hebrew, and I took a history of the Old Testament, which is and the professor was very kind, because the professor knew I was Jewish, and he knew why I was there, and he appreciated that I was curious, and my classmates appreciated me being there because I helped them with their Hebrew, because for them it was like they never heard it before. I helped them with their Hebrew project and Hebrew exams, and the examination was in Hebrew, the final exam. Anyway, make it a long story short, we had lunch with them as well. And so I got to meet not only the guys, but the wives, the spouses, because it was men and women. And they never, ever, for the 2 years that we were associated with them, never tried to convert us. The subject never came up. They wanted to learn from us about what Jewishness, what Jewish thought and theology, what that was all about. So it was very insightful, and it was very enlightening in terms of religion to each other. And we wanted to learn from them, and they wanted to learn from us. And it was very much, this is what religion is about. Tell me what you believe. Tell me why you feel that way. And tell me what you've heard. And tell me your story about your experience. And what is your faith about? And what difficulties do you have with your faith? At what time do you feel that you have lost faith? And other times, what has restored your faith? It goes back and forth. So it was very non-threatening, a very safe environment. And we learned to play cards with them as well. So it was a pinochle. So, and we went to their graduation, and we went to the dance at the end of the year. And it was a phenomenal experience. We talk about religion. All of that comes back. It says, I'm ready to talk about religion. I'll talk to religion to you. You talk to me about what your faith is, and what your religion is, you can ask me about mine, because I feel comfortable about examining and questioning and cross-examining. I'm comfortable by taking on God, and whether or not I believe in God or not, or whether God believes in me or not. I'm ready to deal with all that. I'm not afraid of any of those subjects. So I enjoy that kind of repartee. The cosmos takes me back to an area that's meta, that's beyond all of our comprehension. And yet I enjoy being in a place where I don't understand, but I'm inquiring. Teach me, learn me. I want to learn more. Tell me more. I want to experience more, because I really don't know.
Yeah.
And I'm prepared to that as well. So that's religion.
More word association than drag queens.
Oh, pretty glamorous, glamour. I got a whole album of the drag queens here in Edmonton, and on our desktop. Because I was the photographer. I often went with my camera. Sure, beautiful, go for it. Play with it. Gender fucking, great, go for it.
Chosen
Have
family.
fun.
Chosen family.
In the biological family. I have a sister 8 years older than me, and I'll admit to that, and that's all I'll admit to. She's a psychiatrist, which is awful, and she's a Freudian psychiatrist, and we have no. We're not. I don't want to. I don't burn my side of my bridge, but she's burned her side of the bridge with me. So, but she's not wants to connect with me at all. Um, yeah. So when I think about blood family, bloodline, it's a difficult, it's a hurtful subject.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's hurt.
Yeah. So then chosen family. I don't want to put word
Oh, that's
association there.
desirable.
Desirable, yeah.
It- it's desirable. There's a matter of acceptance and to realize that abandonment and betrayal, I can't accept that. Being betrayed, I can understand. I can forgive that. I can forgive betrayal. I cannot forgive abandonment. And that's when, if you're a parent and you abandon your child's gender expression, you've abandoned that child. That child is left alone in the wilderness, in the side of a ditch, in the countryside, looking for some place that to be adopted and to somehow survive. That's rejection. As I remind people, rejection is a double-edged sword. Not only when somebody rejects you, you turn around, you reject them. It comes back and forth. It's a double-edged sword. So going to rejection is like going to war. If you go to war on somebody, don't expect them to be peaceful in return. There's going to be war on the way back too. So again, if you cut off somebody, you're going to get cut off. And that's, for me, the opposite of what I have with the Edmonton adopted family.
Yeah. Two more words.
You really had a nerve there.
I got you going. two more word associations. Pam.
Yes. Just smile.
Just a smile.
Stars. Okay. The cosmos.
53 years.
I just love to look at it. I just look at her. I just feel good just looking at her.
Yeah, and how can you not? Yeah. One last word association. Karen Hofmann.
Which?
Karen Hofmann.
Oh, yeah. I love myself too. It took me a long time. I knew I was somewhere in here. I was in here somewhere, and I was always trying to come out. And I got to the point where I thought, how many people am I? Am I two people? Am I one? Am I multiple? Am I psychotic? Am I multiple personalities? But no, this is who I am. It's like, yeah, I'm fun. I like myself. I love myself in a nice way.
Yeah, I can say for my husband Jared and myself and the million people who are part of your family, we adore you so much, and I am just so proud of having met you, and I believe so much that we are all writing the greatest story that's ever lived, that has never been put down onto paper, which is our own lives. And I'm so glad that somewhere in our writing of our own stories that my path has crossed yours, and that I'm a small footnote within your story. And I am so glad and proud of that. And what COVID and being away from people have taught me so much is to respect and to make sure that people know. And I'll tell you right now, as I declare to the world on the podcast, Karen Hofmann, I adore you and I love you 100% unconditionally. You are one of my favorite people. And I thank you so much for being part of my podcast and for sharing your story. Because once the trilogy of podcasts is over and we come together with both you and Pam, it's showing the hard work that's been done. And you've shown with your life that this is what love looks like, and it's unconditional love. And oh boy, woman, you've got what we all look for, and that's just so beautiful. God, I adore you. I just adore you so much. Ah, come on, Jason Kenny. Make sure we get our second inoculations, because I've got some hugs to give. Any final words before we come again and meet you again in 2 weeks? Any final words that you would like to share with anybody today?
Well,
We're all verklempt here.
Yeah. Yeah, well, thank you very much. That was I very much appreciate that. It was I've been trying to clear my throat here. The allergy season is upon us, and the pollen is just coming at me fiercely. But I'm also in the process. I've been writing from time to time, and I've been trying to sort of journal, and just the way I talk, you can tell the journal just goes all over the place too. So what I'm hoping for is eventually, with all these different threads that I've been throwing out with these journals, is that my daughter doesn't know it, but I expect her to edit all this material eventually. It'll be in the archives that I'm going to pass on to her, and says, "Here, I've got like a million pages. Here, go through it. Make a book out of that." So I've got so much to say. It's so much to think about. The way I explain it is that there's this big world out there, and there's this big world in here. As I study the world out there, I study the world in here. So I remember a lot of things, a lot of good things. I remember a lot of bad things too. And I accept them both. That's life. It's happened to me. And things don't happen by accident. You don't meet people by accident. It's a purpose. Every time we meet somebody, we were in an airport once traveling, and we got lost in Chicago, and a plane was late, and we had to end up sleeping at the airport. And we go to a bar that's closed. It was closed. We weren't drinking there. And we find a woman there, and she's already lying down. And we start chatting her up, and she tells us that her nephew came out to her as gay, but her nephew was afraid to tell and be open to his own mother. Mm. But advice from the aunt about how to come out to his mother, and it was like, it's not an accident that we were at the airport that night, and in reflection, when I look back at life, there are people that we have met, and we met them at the right time for the right purpose. It was meant for us, and it was meant for them, and it was a meaningful experience for both of us, and we were better for it. So life is not an accident, and sometimes look at accident, you say, that's awful. No, there's something to be taken out of it. There's something to learn about everything. Even if it's bad, there's something to be learned about it. So be open to that. Yeah. That's my final word.
Yeah, there's two things to mention. One of the biggest supports I have in my life, as well as who listens to this podcast every week, is Dwayne Home. So I know that he's going to be listening to this and coming to the end of this podcast right now. So, Dwayne, you too love and adore you to pieces. So we make sure we say that. And as well, Karen, you just mentioned your writing, and you did share with me a chapter that you wrote. And we won't go into it here, but Karen, your writing and your story needs to be said, because I knew your words, but did it hit me to the quick. And good Lord, you are a writer. Like, damn. And I hope you publish before you take your journey elsewhere to another realm, because you need to receive the accolades from your writing.
A good question in terms of the issue of writing or journaling is what is the objective? What is the purpose? And
Yeah.
sometimes for me, it's just been like ventilating, just get it out of my head and put it on paper and see it and step back and look at it as an outsider looking at it on paper as opposed to experiencing it in here.
Mm.
And so again, the question comes, what's the purpose? What is the objective? Who can benefit from this, if anything? And that's why I come back to the issue about that. You are abusing the child by not accepting the child's gender or sexual orientation or their weirdness or whatever it is, whoever they are. If you do not accept your child, if you abandon your child, that is sinful on the parent, to and that was really the bottom line of that chapter, was that, yeah, all the stuff that you go through, you get to the end, it says, what's it all about? That's the lesson.
Yeah.
Don't reject your children. Don't reject your child. You have to be there for your child. Even if you don't like them, it's your child. You have to care for them in some way. Be positive about it. And and you want to talk about religion, you put that in the perspective of religion. That if you want to antagonize God, you reject your children. You reject people. That is sin. That is ultimate sinful.
Yeah.
And that's in my book. And that's why I say abandonment is the ultimate sin. It's virtual murder. Anyway, sorry, I'm getting serious about this.
Oh.
I should put a plug in and say, maybe I should put a plug in and say, send money.
Well, I'm just hoping that all I'm saying is, I'm just hoping that you release your memoirs, because, and people are jealous because I got to read a chapter, and they should be jealous. I do have to wrap up just because of time and those type of things. Yeah. But thank you so much for being part of this episode of Tales of the LGBTQ+. Again, I reiterate, you are the epitome of love, understanding, acceptance, and we are better for everything for having you be here today. So thank you.
Thank you indeed. Thank you.
On behalf of Karen, I would like to thank everyone for listening to our episode today, this Tales of the LGBTQ+. Dwayne Holm, as I mentioned before, always tells me to remind you to please subscribe on our YouTube channel, or wherever you see this information, this on various media platforms. My name is Douglas Parsons. I'm telling you to please be good and always text when you get home. Until next time.